Last of the big games, Miami versus Florida State. Always a big game, but it's been a while since both teams were ranked. And with the expectations that both of these teams have, Miami is now the favorite in the ACC. Florida State has a path to get to the ACC championship game. It's already been clearly a good bounce back from a terrible 2-win season a year ago, but they are coming off of a loss to Virginia in double overtime on the road. But it's kind of like good timing. I was talking to people in Tallahassee, like they think it's good timing to have Miami in town because it kind of just flushes that loss to Virginia. They don't need to dwell on it too much. They know they've got a big challenge coming. The campus, the town, everyone's really excited for it. Miami's favored by 4.5 points, which feels a little bit low for the way that we feel about these two teams. But it's a really fascinating game because I think, we've talked so much about how Miami has improved it in the trenches, offensive line, defensive line, and you've got a Florida State team coming off of a game where there were a lot of defensive line issues. Virginia rushed for over 200 yards, 4.4 yards per carry. And I think for as good as you feel about Tommy Castellano, Gus Malzahn coming in as the OC, and that they believe Tony White is the right guy, it was a really good hire, there's definitely more issues on the defensive side. So what does that look like for Carson Beck and company for Miami, but also just the way that they have been able to control games at the line of scrimmage? It's really fascinating. And then again, you just add everything around it and the way that everyone's going to be amped for this. And I think it's clearly the game of the day.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing with the Florida State D-line. We could start right there. Like, do we think they hung the moon? Because when they played Alabama, they were able to dominate the line of scrimmage. And we know now that Alabama is just not
Can't
a
really
team
run the
that
ball well. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so you play a Virginia and you think you've got everything figured out and you don't. And now all of a sudden, like maybe your guys aren't as locked in. Like, I don't know if their D-line is as bad as what that game would say. Maybe they just felt really confident because they beat Alabama up front and then played a bunch of teams that they're supposed to be able to dominate. They're going to take Miami seriously. You and I mention every time we talk about that team, but they might be the best line of scrimmage team in the country on both sides. So you know exactly what you're going up against. I think one of the interesting things here is for Carson Beck. The last time we saw him out there spinning the rock was against Florida, which, again, a team that we believe has a solid defense, wet ball. So, like, you give them a little bit of a pass because all the quarterbacks we talk to just whine when it's wet. But
they like to whine about a lot of things, though. But that's one of the top ones.
It's quarterbacking. That's what they do. Anyway, wasn't his best day throwing it, right? And so, like, there's this question of going up against a legitimate defense, maybe secondary, that can cause you some problems. What does he look like? And then on the other side of this, I think for, just like the Miami defense aspect of it, like, I think they're going to be challenged in a way that they haven't been challenged in a few weeks too. So I like a lot of the stories in this one. I have built myself into a belief that Miami could be the best team in the country at the moment. So I feel like I should pick them to win and cover here. However, I don't feel very good about that.
Okay, I am going to pick them to cover because I do think Florida State's taken great strides this year. But this is going to be the game that decides whether or not they're like a true ACC contender or if it's just going to be like, okay, you're very comfortably in a bowl game. And like clearly like this was a bounce back, but it's not quite CFP level, not quite ACC contention. And listen, the second spot in the ACC right now is like wide open. There's a lot of different teams. We talked about Georgia Tech. Duke has a pretty nice path. They avoid Miami and Florida State in the regular season. Very different than we thought coming into the year. We thought it was going to be Clemson and everybody else. But I think this is going to be the game that separates like a true contender, a true playoff team from Florida State, which is maybe a year away from that, but still having a great year. So I'm going to take Miami to cover in this one, and that we will, again, because I keep comparing the Carson Becks we're getting, like 2023 Carson Beck or 2024 Carson Beck. The Florida game was more 24 with the mistakes and just like the way he played. I think we're going to see good Carson Beck in this game against Florida State in a defense that has some opportunities to exploit.